Hi, everyone. Welcome to Journeys with PDA Coffee Chat podcast, where we seek connection, community, and co-regulation while discussing all things PDA. Hello, PDA community. Before we start our next episode, we'd like to offer a trigger warning for mature themes. We're going to be talking about topics such as serial killers, 9/11, pornography, and the Hillsborough football stadium disaster. So we just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware that this might be a little bit of a triggering kind of episode for people who might be sensitive about those topics. We're also going to be defining monotropism, and we would like to give the appropriate credit to autisticrealms.com, from which we sourced our information. Now, we invite you to join us as we discuss special interests with Laura Kerbey.
Welcome to Journeys with PDA Coffee Chat podcast. I'm Kerissa.
And I'm Heather Jessup. Today we have a special guest with us, Laura Kerbey from PAST, Positive Assessment, Support, and Training.
So today we really like to talk about all the different aspects of being neurodiverse. So we talk about PDA, ADHD, being autistic, and everything that goes along with being that type of a person. So I'm really excited about today's special guest and today's topic. We are going to talk about special interests, and we have Laura who is going to join in the discussion. So Laura, go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you.
Thank you. Yeah, so as Heather said, I'm Laura from PAST, which is Positive Assessment, Support and Training. And I have been working in the area of education, supporting neurodivergent young people for over 21 years now. So I have a specialism in autism and particularly in PDA. And as well as running PAST, which, as the name suggests, we do assessments, we do support, and we do training. I also co-run a tutoring company called Kite with a very good friend of mine, and Kite provides what we call here in the UK AOTIS packages, which is educated other than in school. And we have, I think we're now at 52 learners within Kite, and they are almost all autistic with a PDA profile. I am neurodivergent myself, so I have an ADHD diagnosis that I got at the grand age of 46. And I also self-identify as autistic now as well, because I think getting my ADHD diagnosis made me realise, well, it was like peeling off layers of an onion. So, yeah, and I think lots of my friends were telling me, of course you're autistic. And I think one of the things that really led initially my friends into believing that, and then me too, eventually, one of the things, not the sole reason, was how strong my special interests are. Now, I'm not saying that though you can be ADHD and have really strong special interests, but my special interests are quite strong. Let's just say that.
So before we go on, let's define what a special interest is, and especially in the realm of someone who is neurodivergent. So one word that's attached to special interest is a word called monotropism. And it's a theory that was developed that basically encompasses the belief that at any one moment, it's the amount of attention an individual can give, and that it's limited. It is considered to be an underlying principle behind autism. And some people would describe monotropism as being like a force that draws autistic people into a specific channel of interest, much like a river, monotropism has momentum. And monotropism can be very simply defined as a happy flow state.
Yeah.
So on the topic of monotropism and special interest, Laura, would you like to share what maybe some that you've had in the past, your current monotropism?
Yeah, so there are some that sort of come and go, and there are some that are fairly constant. One of my special interests that I've had for years and years and years, probably the longest one, which sounds a little bit alarming, is serial killers. So I've always been really fascinated by serial killers and crime. And when I was much younger, like in my late teens and early 20s, there was actually a magazine here that used to be able to get called I think, I can't remember what it was called. But it was actually a publication, a monthly publication that you could get. It was all about serial killers, and they would profile different serial killers each month. But I remember when I was at school, so when I was even younger than that, there was a very high profile murder near me. I would have been about 10 or 11 at the time. And I remember becoming utterly fascinated with this case. And although there was like buzz around it, there was a lot of media attention, there was a lot of kind of interest in the case because it was local, and it was a horrible, it was a young girl that was murdered. But I just became like, I was just obsessed with it. And actually I just wanted to just mention that, because otherwise I'll forget, that I think people talk about autistic people having obsessions. I don't want to say that they're obsessions. I think special interest is far more accurate. But sometimes they can become quite obsessive. And I just remember being just completely, I just had to find out everything I could about what had happened, and like read every single article on it. And I remember my dad sort of saying, well, you've got some very macabre sort of interests, Laura. So serial killers is still ongoing, and I love watching sort of documentaries on Netflix about serial killers. I actually went to a brilliant talk on serial killers last year, like near my house, and it was actually very reassuring, actually, because I went to this talk and I was expecting it to be like in a little room with about 50 people. There was nearly 800 people at this talk. So it's obviously quite a common interest, and obviously the number of documentaries on it. But the other kind of thing that I get very, very, very interested in, and again, it sounds really macabre, but I don't know what it is. I get, like, any kind of disaster I find really fascinating. So, for example, the Hillsborough football disaster, like, I would read so much about it and become quite, again, it would become very all-consuming. And sometimes I would feel drawn to looking at things and watching things that I actually find quite disturbing. But it's like you've said, Heather, it's like a force that's like pulling me towards looking at that stuff. Sorry,
and I find it no, not at all. The Hillsborough football disaster that happened. There's a documentary on. I'm sure there's several documentaries on it, but ESPN has got one, 30 for 30. And when that came out and I watched that, I went down this rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And of just this, and I was watching every single thing I could on it. And, I don't know if you remember, Laura, but when you were here in the States last year, you and I were talking about, why do we do this? Why do we watch? And, I said, it actually helps my anxiety. It helps me, like, because I put myself in that position, and it's like, okay, well, if I happen to be at a sporting event or any kind of event where there is a crush episode or a stampede crush episode, it's like, okay, what do I need to do? How do I get out of this? How do I keep? And you're right. People look at it and they're like, well, this is really macabre. This is, shouldn't you, isn't it, aren't there, but it helps quell my anxiety.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, Heather, one of our mutual shared interests that we have spent a lot of time messaging each other about is 9/11.
Yes.
So the 9/11, I became utterly, I mean, I think I've watched every single documentary on 9/11. Let me show you a book that I got recently. So here are two of my latest purchases. So there's this one, On the Ground, after 9/11. So this is all about, this is mental health responses and practical knowledge gain. So this is like the kind of aftermath of 9/11, but from like a mental health perspective. Oh, hang on, I'm going to get another one. Sorry, I should have been more prepared, shouldn't I? Understanding Criminal Behaviour is another one, recent purchase. And then another special interest is the Titanic. So I think what it is about all these things, they're all like associated with death, and they're all just like, Titanic, 9/11, they're disasters. But actually, what I really love reading about as well is like the kind of the human, like, heroic element of it as well. Like, like I love reading, I've got another book which is upstairs, and it's the book written by the last woman that was pulled out of the rubble of 9/11.
Oh, the one where the fire, the fireman, like,
there was a woman, it was one of the last women that was pulled out, and she and basically she said the name of the man that pulled her out. He said, "I'm so and so, I'm going to pull you out," but they never found who it was, and they couldn't find any firefighter or anybody who actually went by that name. So it was all almost quite sort of supernatural. But I don't like just reading about all the disaster element of all these things. I actually like reading about all the kind of like heroics and all the kind of the beautiful side of humans that you see when these things happen. So yeah, I don't think it is macabre. I think, like you said, Heather, there's an element of like, understanding, like making it you feel less anxious. I've always been fascinated in behavior and psychology. I did my degree in psychology, so I love like learning all the positives of and all the behavior stuff. So I've just read another book which was written by one of the top psychiatrists who works with like serial killers and murderers and sex offenders in one of our very famous prisons here. And that was one of the best books I've ever read, because she humanized all these people and she didn't criminalize them all. And I just found it so so interesting to read about like the background of why people have done these horrendous things. And she doesn't excuse their behavior, but she explains it. And I just think it's just so fascinating.
Absolutely.
I think there's a part of it brings like a reassurance or a hope of there's the bad, and there's bad and there's scary things in the world, and it's hard to understand why someone would do these things or why bad things happen. But then it helps you to almost maybe like process or work through like,
exactly,
here's how you could survive, or here's how you could be prepared.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Something like that. So one of my special interests that I have is actually murder mystery novels. And
okay.
I'm
sorry, my cat is my dress. I'm really sorry if I need to sort this cat out. Stop it. Sorry.
I am absolutely so deeply obsessed with Agatha Christie books, and Sherlock Holmes. And so it's interesting for us to kind of talk about here. All three of us kind of have this fascination with, disaster and crime and murder, and to actually dive into it in different ways. But so it's just really interesting because that's my favorite genre of books to read.
Yeah.
Recently, I don't remember what the platform is, because, but there was a series of Jeffrey Dahmer, and it was fascinating. And as I was watching, like maybe one or two episodes in, I also kind of try to read as much as I can, in between the episodes. And there was a backlash from some of Dahmer's victims' families that Hollywood should not portray him as right. Exactly. And then, which led me to a Dr. Phil episode. Are you aware of Dr. Phil?
I'm aware of Dr. Phil, yeah.
All right. Where he had some of his almost victims, and he also had some family members of victims, but he also had a criminal, like forensic psychologist on who studied serial killers and studied the forensics behind it. And I don't know if it was Dr. Phil that asked her, but the question was, is it okay to watch these shows? Is it okay for just, the average person to watch? And she goes, if it does anything, it helps arm you in knowing what the characteristics of a serial killer are. And so you may, you don't fall victim to it. And I think that just dovetails right into what we're all talking about. It's just that lowering the anxiety, and it's okay. It's okay to watch this, because then again, it can help prepare us.
Yeah. And, just because you watch documentaries about serial killers and murders doesn't mean that you're going to become a serial killer and a murderer, But it's, sorry, Kerissa.
Well, I was going to say I think having this fascination or this interest in something, where you're continuing on with it, it helps. I know for me, it helps me escape the real world, and
exactly, yeah,
and it just gives me something to think about and to focus on and to be interested. And, I'm like, oh, well, you could watch a video on YouTube about it, and then you're going to watch the Netflix show, and then there's a book and an article, and like, I got a Wikipedia, all of it. And so then you get to incorporate all these different facets on this one topic. And so I think it helps give my very busy mind a place to come and center and to settle into. And that's cozy, and like, that's comfortable if I can, and safe, because I get a ton of racing thoughts and all that, like internal narrative of second thinking that conversation or the encounter, or being really worn out or tired from whatever it is that I did. And so what am I going to do with myself to sort of center calm? And so having that one subject that you can dive into, maybe you want to read, maybe you don't have enough energy to even read. And so, you can do it a different, you can look into it in a different way.
Well, I think one of the things that I struggle with the most as an ADHDer is I find it almost impossible to do nothing. Like I'm not good at being, I can't be bored. Like I have to be doing something all the time, and that means it can be really hard for me to switch off. And sometimes, like, I will drift back into work. So I have to say, I think my work is a bit of a special interest. Like I'm so interested in particularly PDA. But I'm not someone that can just sort of sit around and do nothing, like at the weekends. But I know it's not healthy for me to constantly be working. So actually having my special interests, it gives me a break. So my kind of newest kind of special interest, which is something that I have sort of been posting about on my page quite a lot recently, is my doll's house, or doll's houses now. Now I have to say, one of the most popular posts that I've done this year, which I think I had over 1,000 likes, which is massive, was pictures of my doll's house. And one of the things for me, and I've written about this before, is there is nothing better than finding someone who shares your special interest. Like there is nothing like Heather, like we have had such brilliant chats and communication about 9/11, and you'd be like, oh Laura, you need to watch this, and have you seen this picture, and have you seen this? And it was like, yes Heather, keep coming at me with all this stuff. And it's like, I think you know, some people, like one person on my page, when I put this post up and I said, you know, like I'm nearly 50 and my passion at the moment is my doll's houses, and one person put, that's weird. I was like, why is it weird? And it's so lovely to be able to post stuff about my doll's houses and get such amazing comments and people saying, oh Laura, that's beautiful and we love looking at that, and oh that's so cute. But the last 2 weekends I've had two, you know, things have been quite sort of stressful for me recently, partly due to work, partly due to sort of stuff going on at home with a dog that's epileptic, which is not easy to deal with. And for me to be able to just go upstairs and escape and decorate my doll's houses and go on to Etsy and buy little tiny little things, I get so much pleasure from it. And I'll say to my husband, oh, I'm just popping upstairs for 10 minutes and I genuinely think, oh, I'll be 10 minutes, and he'll come up like 2 hours later, and that 2 hours has gone like that. But whilst I'm playing with, I'm not playing with my doll's house because I'm decorating it and designing it and, you know, setting it all up, that I don't have a concept of time. I've become completely time blind. But when I'm focusing on my doll's house, I'm not, or whatever special interest it is, reading about serial killers or whatever it is, I'm not, it's blocking out all the other stuff that I don't want to think about or I shouldn't be thinking about. So it's very, very therapeutic to have it. And I think, like I said, like I did a post a little while ago as well about this, that about when I went to a town in the UK, quite away from us, called Ludlow, which is full of like Edwardian and Tudor buildings, and I love that's another special interest, is old buildings. And we were walking around this town, and I kept stopping every like few minutes to take photographs, and my husband was like, Laura, you know, come on. And then he started getting involved. He was like, Laura, come and look at this one, this was built in 15 something. I'd be like, oh my god, that's amazing. We ended up having the best weekend ever because we connected on this new level that I've never explored old buildings with my husband before. But the fact that he took not just an interest in my special interest, but was like almost like helping me with it, it just connected us so brilliantly. And I think this is something I talk about in my book, is that when you share an interest in someone's special interest, it's such a great way to connect with them. So some of the best sessions I've had with the children that I work with, we haven't picked up a pen, we haven't done anything about other than just sit and just chat about their special interests, and it's just a brilliant way to build a connection and build a relationship. And if someone was to say to me, oh, like, that's a bit weird, like you're 50 and you go to like dolls' houses, I'd be like, I don't think I want to be your friend anymore.
Yeah, right.
You don't, yeah. And you're not coming around to play with my dolls' house, that's for sure.
That's right. You will rue the day.
Yeah.
No dollhouse for you.
No doll's house for you.
Well, I think, talking about that connection and how important that is. And I think, so I love Agatha Christie, and you're, building and decorating a dollhouse. And, so like we have our things that we really love. But they're so different than, say, like our children. My children are not interested in reading Agatha Christie books with me, or like talking about like, ooh, who do you think it was, and so then at the same point, my kids, and I think a lot of the kids in this, like that generation, they are into video games. And so my kids love Minecraft and they love Fortnite, or not Fortnite. I know a lot of kids do Roblox. And so it's really important, though, even though I don't know a lot about it, or I'm not especially interested in that, or maybe I don't understand it. But, when my child comes to me and they want to talk about, speed bridging in Minecraft, it's really important that I stop what I'm doing and I sit down and I look at that and allow them to share that with me. And I ask questions and, try to be involved and, let them teach me that and show me that. And so that is how they are able to communicate with me. And that's how they're able to really feel that connection. And so I think it's so important to recognize, in any people in your life, your spouse or your partner, or your kids, what is their special interest? And, how can you contribute to that? How can you encourage it? And, so like, is it some Minecraft jammies? Like that's going to be really exciting for them. And then when you do make that connection.
Yeah. And if you, so this is something that I occasionally will talk about with families in consults. They'll say to me, I always say, like, I always ask, what's the special interest? And, particularly if parents are finding like they feel like their child is becoming a little bit isolated from them, or, they're locked in their room all the time. And I'm like, well, and I'll say to parents sometimes, well, join them in their special interests, like start gaming with them. And they're like, oh, but I'm rubbish at gaming. I'm like, well, get them to teach you. But like, even just going in and saying, well, this game looks really cool, I wish I could play that, but I'm rubbish at computer games. I'm not saying the child's going to put down their control and go, well, here you go, Mum, I'll teach it to you now. But even you just expressing an interest in that is so valuable. Like, so my son Finn, who is 17, he's a macho boy, he's like into football and everything. He's been working recently, helping his friends down. So they fit windows in houses. And he came home the other day and he went, oh, Mum, we went to this person's house today, and they had this really amazing doll's house. And I started chatting to the lady who owned the house, and I told her that my mum's got a doll's house, and she let me take some pictures of it to show you. And I was like, that meant so much to me, that my 17-year-old son, he respects my special interest. Like, he doesn't think it's weird. And again, it was just like another layer connection. Like, he doesn't have to be interested in dolls' houses to respect my interest in dolls' houses. And it's the same with gaming. And just on that as well, and again, I do cover this in the book, that, you know, we should respect everyone's special interests, even if they seem a bit weird or inappropriate. Now, if it's genuinely inappropriate, if you've got a child that's looking at like hardcore porn or something that's their special interest, obviously that's not okay, and that's something that we have to deal with. But I remember once an educator being horrified that a child that they were supporting, their special interest at the time was Hitler. And she was like, it's inappropriate, like, I'm not going to talk about it. I was like, but why not? Like, you don't have to agree with what Hitler did to find him a fascinating human being. Like, you can still show an interest in that level of interest. You can still put some boundaries in place about what's okay to talk about and what's not okay to talk about. But if you just squash that special interest down, you're going to destroy the relationship. You're going to ruin a chance of connection, and potentially remove any opportunities of like learning that you could connect to that special interest. Yeah. So I think you know, we have to look for ways to connect, and the special interests are brilliant ways to do that. But also in my book, I do talk about a little word of caution here, because you can hijack someone's special interest. You know, like if a child's special interest is, I don't know, Minecraft, and then you think, oh, I'm going to get them to do all their learning using Minecraft, you've kind of like, you've tainted the thing that they love by making it a learning experience. It's really, really important that there's like a, you know, a balance between using special interest to gain interest, to gain attention. But like you just said, Kerissa, it could just be like turning up wearing a t-shirt with like a Roblox character on it, rather than like, I've designed all these maths worksheets and they're all linked. You know, it's like, there's different ways that you can do it whilst respecting that that's something that's very precious to them. So you don't want to like damage their relationship with it, because then they might just reject it, like, no, I know what you're trying to do here.
Yes. One of my son's special interests is Formula One racing. And I would just, because most of the races happen when I'm asleep, because it's usually on the other side of the world. You know, one of the first things I'll do when I wake up after a race is I'll go and see who won. I'll see if whatever, you know, was there anything remarkable that happened during the race? And then I'll just put out one or two sentences. You know, hey, morning. Yeah. Leclerc won or something, you know, it's like, oh, how about that? Wow. Did you? And that's it. And then I leave it alone. And then I leave it alone and I go away. And the way this can snowball into other things is, my son, who has been a school avoider, we're homeschool unschoolers, is that for almost a month now, he's been able to participate in an online F1 group that's facilitated by a teacher. But I mean, that is just, to me, for someone who just absolutely, the thought of, you know, stepping into a school or doing anything academically related, the fact that he feels safe enough now and he's willing and wants to access this online community is just, it just fills my heart. It just fills my heart with joy. So it wasn't about hijacking the F1. It was just about, you know, using it, providing stepping stones to get to the next, to get the scaffolding, to get to the next level, whatever it might look like.
Giving him an opportunity and again, like, to share.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And again, to be for anybody to be able to sort of feel safe in any environment so that they can learn, they've got to feel comfortable with the environment, which includes the people in it. So if you're stepping into an environment where you think, well, these people are also interested in some of the things that I'm interested in, it just helps you build. Again, it's all about connections, isn't it? Again, it's like we couldn't go, unfortunately, because there was a train strike, but there was a huge Doll's House exhibition in London a little while ago. And the fact that my husband said he'd come with me, it was like, that just meant so much. Like, he's not interested in dolls' houses at all. If he sees, like, if my friends see like a little video of like miniatures or stuff, and they send it to me, I'm like, oh, thank you. Like, that means a lot that you've shared that with me.
I do that with my son. Like, I'll find a video. Apparently, Le Mans, one of the races, a 24-hour race, just
was this week
concluded.
Was yesterday, wasn't it?
Was it yesterday? My days all run together. And so I just sent him a little clip on Le Mans, and I know he's watched it because I can see the receipt at the bottom of the text. But it's just one of those little ways of saying, hey, I respect you. I love you. I care about what you care about. And this is how I'm going to show it to you.
Yeah. I think the other thing we have to, again, with PDAs, be very mindful of is that special interests can change quite regularly as well. So again, I think, I always say I've made the mistake myself. And again, I talk about this in the book, when I've spent hours like preparing resources for a session, because I've been with a child 1 week and they've been talking about, I think the example I give in the book is about Star Wars. So I went home and I made I'd spent hours creating all these Star Wars resources. Heather, you would have liked them because you like Star Wars, don't you?
Yes, that's one of my special interests, Star Wars. Yes.
Yeah, and then I took these resources in the next week thinking he'd be really like excited by them, and he was like, why I brought those in? Like, I don't want to talk about Star Wars, and he'd moved on. And again, I think what's really important is that you respect that. You don't, you can't say, oh, come on, no, I spent hours making these, the least you can do. That's not going to work with someone with PDA. So that comes back to your point, Heather, that monotropic flow. Like, you just have to get in the flow and go with it. You can't stop the flow.
No. It's like trying to hold back a broom, the ocean with a broom, the tide with the broom. You can't do it. Absolutely. Nope.
I think it's also, we're talking about like one special interest, but I think it's pretty common to have several special interests, and you could kind of be in one zone this day, and a different subject that day, and kind of back and forth. And I know that I see that with my kids a lot. And PDAers, like, they like novelty. And so she kind of will, she'll bounce, she has like her stuff, but she'll kind of bounce around in between it. And so, that's like where you're talking about, you can't try to dive in to that person's special interest, because, it is that flow, and where are they flowing today? And what you can do is, just engage and be patient. And, if today she wants to talk to me for 30 minutes about the outfit her character wears in Roblox, then okay, show me that. Let's sit down. And she's going to do that monologue and then pop up and, zip on back. And then later that afternoon, she could be on to something entirely different. Right. And so then I'm like, oh, okay, well, let's hear about this one then. And so trying to like get yourself into somebody's special interest, there is kind of that danger in that, where you just need to engage where they are in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
And even if it's not super interesting to you, listen and ask questions about it. And then I don't need to go and download Roblox and try and make my own character outfit, because like you said, then that afternoon she'd be like, why would you do that? And so, whatever comes next, then just be ready for that one. And
yeah. And
Absolutely.
sometimes something that's happened a couple of times is when special interests merge together as well. So I'm in this amazing group on Facebook, which is all about miniatures and mini things. And somebody had created a miniature morgue. And it was I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. Because it was they were clearing up after, because I'm quite interested in anatomy and obviously death and everything, what we talked about earlier. And the detail in this morgue was amazing. So that was kind of two of my special interests, colliding. And I spent hours, not hours, but ages, just oh my God, this is amazing. But again, it's I bet that person would be so interesting to talk to, because for them to create a miniature morgue in the detail they'd gone into, they've obviously got the interest in miniatures. They've obviously got the interest in death or anatomy, whatever. So I'd be like, yeah, I bet that'd be a really cool person to meet. So, and again, the other reason I love that group so much is because people make the weirdest miniature stuff. Seriously, anything you can think of is in there. And everyone's like, oh my God, that's awesome. That's amazing. No one ever says that took you 12 hours. It took you 12 hours to make that miniature nail varnish bottle or whatever it is. Everyone's just like, oh, that's amazing. Good for you. It's a community. It's like a community. So everyone's showing the same interest. So that's what you can create your own little, even if it's a one-to-one little community, when you're just sitting there and you're talking about things that you love. And like I say, sometimes it will be shared interest. Shared interest is the best, because you're reciprocating knowledge and interest and information. But if it's not a shared interest, then you can learn. I mean, again, I've learned about so many amazing things from the young people with PDA that I work with, random stuff that I'd never heard of. One of my children I see, he doesn't do it so much now, but he went through a phase. Every time I saw him, he'd tell me the most random animal fact, just really, and it was usually something fairly gross as well. And I'd be like, whoa, and I was that's amazing. Where did you learn that? But it was the best icebreaker to every session. And I can imagine if he said some of these things to a teacher in a school, he would be told that's not appropriate, or that's irrelevant. Nothing is irrelevant. It's all useful information.
Absolutely. Yes.
Well, and that's such an important piece, I think, that people can take away from this conversation, is whatever that person's special interest is, it is valid. And you don't shame it and don't criticize it. And that is where they're going to find community, and that's how they're going to connect. And if you're going to say well, you're too old to be doing that, and then that person has shame and has to kind of shut that down, that decreases creativity, and it makes it difficult for that person to be willing to share anything or to communicate. So one of my special interests is Barbie. I love Barbie. And so when I was young, I had all the Barbies and I had all the stuff, and I absolutely loved it. But then I got to an age where I was too old for that. You're too old for Barbies, and that's not something that you should enjoy, and you need to grow up and move on. And so then I just like secretly in my mind, would just kind of like it, but couldn't express it. And so after realizing that I'm autistic and having my diagnosis and realizing that special interests they're a thing and that they're not bad, I was like, oh my gosh, I love Barbie so much, and I love everything pink. And it was so liberating and so freeing for me to just go, no, I really do love this. And so even right now today, this is my Barbie hoodie, and it says Barbie on it, and it's one of my favorites, and I love it. And so my daughter knows that I love Barbie. And so if we're somewhere and she sees a Barbie t-shirt, she's going to grab it and look what I found. It's like a treasure. And so she can support that, like she can connect with me by recognizing my special interests. She doesn't really care that much about Barbie, but she knows I love it. And so now she gets to kind of join into my world and gets to know me and to connect with me. And then we have this sort of fun adventure of everywhere we go, we're looking for something Barbie. And so it is this community and this beautiful connection when you have the freedom to share whatever you're interested in.
And you know what I've been doing the whole time we've been talking? I've been thinking, so Heather, when you were talking about Formula One, I was thinking, Heather's son would probably love to talk to Steve because Steve's really into Formula One. And then Kerissa, you've mentioned Barbies, and I have a client who is 13, I think, who collects like vintage Barbies. I'm thinking, wow, Kerissa would love to talk. So the whole time my brain is thinking, these people they could connect, and do you know what I mean? It's like this is what we should be doing, though, isn't it? Like, just like thinking of all the connections that we can make. And again, it comes back to that community, doesn't it? So,
yes.
And we feel safest in communities where we can share openly, like you said, Kerissa. Like some people might think, it's age inappropriate that you play with, you're into Barbies. It's age inappropriate that I love dolls' houses. Like if people shamed me, I wouldn't not be interested in those things anymore. I just do it in secret.
Right.
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
And be embarrassed to tell people.
Right. And it's like when somebody has a disparaging remark of somebody's special interest, it's like you're chipping away at their soul. You're chipping away at their, you're chipping away at their soul. And you shouldn't do that. It does hurt. Absolutely. So Laura, you have mentioned your book several times. However, I think we should probably mention the title of the book.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I just happen to have it here.
Oh, you do?
I've just happened to. Oh, actually, linked to my special interest. This is the actual book, and then this is the Doll's House version of the book.
Oh, I love that so much.
I had a 1/12 version of the book made for my Doll's House, but I don't want it in my Doll's House. I like having it here. So yes, the Educator's Experience of Pathological Demand Avoidance. Illustrated by the wonderful Eliza Fricker, and it talks about special interests, quite a lot in the book, because the kind of the theme that runs through the book is connection, and special interest can be such a great way to make connection. But it's also got one of the chapters is called Weaving in Interest and Learning from Each Other, which is kind of what we've been talking about this evening or this afternoon in America. Or this morning.
Oh, this
I don't know what time it is.
It's after. It's just
afternoon.
slightly.
It's
afternoon.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my husband, one of his special interests is the weather. So whenever I'm on a call normally with Heather, he always has to like get a weather update, doesn't he, Heather?
Yes. Well, it's beautiful here today. It's
beautiful,
cool. It's not humid. It's really pretty.
Humid here.
Yeah. Sorry. No, not here.
Yeah, so you can give him Heather's weather update now.
Yeah.
He will be very happy with but again, it will make him very happy that I will go and see him now and say, oh, I've just been on a call with Heather and Kerissa, and here's the weather in America. Or not in America, because I don't speak this, but here's the weather where Heather is. And he'll be like, oh, thanks for that.
Yeah. Well, you can tell him it's a cool and slightly cloudy 68 in Montana. And probably thunderstorms this afternoon. So that's the weather forecast in Montana.
I will tell him that as well.
So awesome. So kind of just, I'm going to give a brief little summary because we covered so much amazing stuff here, and so that takeaway is don't shame a special interest. Don't abuse it by using it to, I don't know, over influence somebody else. Don't they don't need Minecraft worksheets to do math. Don't kill their special interest with work. And special interest is about connection and safety, and let a person dive in to that and let them block out the rest of the world. And you don't have to love it, but you can ask questions and still be involved. And we will share information on Laura's wonderful book, because I think it's such a helpful tool for PDAers and autistic children, not just PDA. And Laura, I just have to say I'm so grateful that you're always willing to chat with us. And
I love talking, in case you haven't noticed. I can talk for England. I'm always happy to chat to you.
We love getting to talk to you and getting to hear about what you're up to. And I personally absolutely love all of the dollhouse pictures.
Yes.
I just, and maybe it sort of like verges onto my Barbie type special interest. Is I love it, and I find it really interesting to get to see that. I find it interesting to know what other people's special interests are. And so thank you for sharing all of that with us.
Well, thank you, because it's just been lovely just to talk about all the things that I love for however long we were talking for. I don't know, because it went so fast because I was enjoying it so much.
It does go fast, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And if you would like more information on pathological demand avoidance, you can find it at journeyswithpda.com. We are also on Facebook and Instagram.